It all began on August 15th, 1971. A calm evening in America. Millions of families sat in front of their televisions as President Richard Nixon appeared on screen. His words sounded simple, almost harmless. The United States will suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Few realized it at that moment, but those words quietly ended something that had existed for thousands of years. The link between money and reality. That day, money lost its soul. But to understand why that moment mattered, we have to rewind the story. Way back. For most of human history, money wasn't just paper or numbers. It was real, carved, mined, and forged from the earth itself. In ancient Egypt, gold rings and silver bars flowed through markets. In 500 BC, the Lydians, a people from what is now Turkey, created the first true coins made from electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver. The Romans carried that idea forward, stamping their emperors' faces on silver dinars, spreading the belief that as long as a coin had weight, it had worth. But greed has always been stronger than honesty. By the 3rd century AD, the Roman Empire began secretly mixing cheaper metals into their coins to pay for endless wars. Soldiers were still paid, merchants were still trading, but the coins were worth less every year. People noticed, trust broke, and eventually, the empire collapsed from within. Rome's fall wasn't just about enemies or politics, it was about corrupted money. Fast forward to the 1800s. The world was industrializing. Steam engines roared, trade expanded, and nations needed a stable way to value their currencies. That's when the gold standard was born. Under this system, every paper note represented real gold locked inside national vaults. If a government printed too much money, its gold supply would reveal the lie. It was simple. It was fair, and for a time, it worked. But truth, as always, is expensive, and wars are even more so. By 1914, the First World War exploded across Europe. Governments panicked. They needed weapons, soldiers, and supplies. Fast, the printing presses began to run. By 1918, the war was over, but the honesty of money was gone. Currencies inflated, economies shattered, and the world entered chaos. Then came the Great Depression in 1929, followed by World War II just a decade later. Humanity had destroyed not only its cities, but also its financial foundation. So in 1944, the world's leaders gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to rebuild. There, 44 nations signed an agreement. The US dollar would become the center of the global financial system, and it would be backed by gold. Every other currency would be tied to the dollar. For a while, it worked beautifully. The US held over 70% of the world's gold, and the dollar became as good as gold. America was the banker of the world. But by the late 1960s, cracks started to show. The Vietnam War was draining US finances, and massive social programs were costing billions. Other countries like France began to notice that the US was printing more dollars than it had gold to back them. In 1971, French President Charles de Gaulle even sent warships to America to exchange paper dollars for real gold. That's when Nixon made his famous announcement. With one stroke, he ended the gold standard. From that moment on, the dollar, and every currency linked to it, became fiat money. Money that had value only because the government said so. It was no longer backed by gold, silver, or anything real. It was a belief system, a faith-based illusion, and that illusion gave governments and banks a dangerous new power. The power to create money out of nothing. Throughout the 1980s, this new magic trick fueled massive growth. Credit cards exploded, Wall Street boomed, and the stock market became the temple of modern faith. But every dollar printed was borrowed. Every loan created more debt. By the 1990s, the system was addicted, not to gold, but to credit. The dot-com crash in 2000, the housing collapse in 2008, and the pandemic crisis in 2020 all followed the same pattern. When the system started to break, central banks simply printed more money to keep it alive. Each rescue made the next crash even bigger. Today, the world's total debt has passed $315 trillion. More than 3 times the entire global economy. Governments owe. Corporations owe. You owe. The system survives only as long as people keep believing that debt equals wealth. But deep down, we know something's off. Prices rise, wages stagnate, and we're told it's normal. But inflation isn't an accident. It's a quiet tax, a way to shift wealth from the people who earn it to the institutions that create it. And now, as we move deeper into the digital age, a new transformation is happening. Cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are redefining what money even means. On the surface, it looks like progress. Fast, smart, efficient. But beneath that shiny surface lies the same old story. Control. Because when money becomes pure code, whoever controls the code controls everything. They can track every purchase, freeze any account, and decide what you can or cannot buy. So here we are, full circle. From gold you could hold 2 digits you can't even see. From coins with emperors' faces, to currencies run by algorithms. The tools changed, but the game stayed the same. Every empire that corrupted its money eventually fell. Rome, Spain, Britain, and maybe now, the modern world is next in line. The truth is, money didn't just lose its soul. We lost our connection to what money truly meant. It was supposed to be a tool of exchange, not a chain of dependence. Real value never vanished. It simply shifted. It still exists in things that can't be printed or delegated: knowledge, land, creativity, trust. So when the next shift comes, and it will, the real question won't be how much do you have? It will be, what do you actually trust? Because history doesn't repeat because it has to. It repeats because we forget.